Go.
Okay. John, Paul, George, and Ringo are widely remembered for their massively successful band, the Beatles, which sold over 1 billion records worldwide. Although it's hard to imagine them as anything but the musical giants that they are today, they got their start from humble beginnings. Before they became legends, they were 4 lads from Liverpool, playing for around 60 people in a dingy basement club for about 3 shillings a gig. The Beatles are a band that have enraptured me since 7th grade. I was a certified Beatlemaniac, listening to their entire discography, watching countless interviews, and reading a few books along the way, everything I could do to soak up as much information as I could about my favorite band. The Beatles are one of the most influential bands of all time, and they changed the music scene forever. Their history is an inspiring tale of pursuing your dreams no matter what the odds are. The story of the Beatles' rise to fame is a captivating reflection of society, including chance meetings, creative chemistry, and one of the most enduring songwriting partnerships of history, all that led to skyrocket 4 lads to a fame that transcends time. Today I will be talking about how the Beatles met, their songwriting process, and how they popped into the music scene, seemingly overnight, to become a global sensation. First we can start with the day that John and Paul met. On July 6, 1957, 15-year-old Paul McCartney decided to attend the Woolton Parish Church Garden Festival. John was playing in a band called the Quarrymen, and he was the lead singer and the rhythm guitarist. Paul watched in amazement as John, with his teddy boy haircut, hammered the banjo chords that his mother Julia taught him on a guitar tuned like a banjo. He played a sloppy rendition of Come Go With Me by the Dell Vikings and came up with his own lyrics when he forgot the original. Paul was impressed, and so after the show, he asked a mutual friend to introduce them. Evan Andrews wrote in the article published on November 13, 2009, titled John Lennon Met Paul McCartney for the First Time. Paul pulled out the guitar he was carrying on his back and began playing Eddie Cochran's 20 Flight Rock, then Gene Vincent's Bebop-A-Lula, and then a medley of Little Richard numbers. John was impressed by Paul's superior guitar skills and their mutual love for the same music. A week later, he asked Paul to join the Quarrymen. John and Paul began writing together, and they formed a deep connection sparked by their love of music and deepened by the loss of their mothers at a young age. They started to get attention in the music industry when George Harrison and Ringo Starr joined the band. George joined when Paul introduced him to John because they needed a lead guitarist. John was against the idea originally because he thought 14-year-old George was too young, but he soon changed his mind after George played a blistering rendition of Heartbreak Hotel on the electric guitar. George soon became an irreplaceable member due to his guitar abilities and his songwriting skills. The Quarrymen started to take off when they started playing gigs at the Cavern Club in Liverpool with Pete Best on drums. Brian Epstein saw them play one day and decided to sign them on to his record label and become their manager. In the article written by Chuck Arnold for the New York Post, he says, after officially becoming their manager with a 5-year contract signed January 24, 1962, Epstein, who Paul McCartney has called the fifth Beatle, would go on to take the quartet to an unprecedented level of Beatlemania before his death from an accidental overdose in 1967. As he once wildly predicted, he indeed made them bigger than Elvis. Brian then told the boys that Pete would have to go if they wanted to make it big. Pete was sacked and Ringo Starr was brought in as a replacement in 1962. Ringo got his start drumming on pots and pans in the hospital where he spent most of his childhood due to bad health. He soon got a drum kit for his birthday and kickstarted his drumming career. They then decided to change their name to the Beatles, inspired by Buddy Holly's band, the Crickets. Now that the Beatles exist in their complete form, we can talk about how they reached stardom. They decided to record their first album called Please Please Me, which had 8 original Beatles songs and 6 covers. It was recorded in one 13-hour session. One of the standout songs on this album is Twist and Shout, which John Lennon sang the vocals on. He came into the studio with a cold that day, and after the 13-hour session, his vocal cords were destroyed. He chugged a glass of milk and ate a few cough drops and delivered one of the best vocal performances on the album. The song soon defined them as a rock and roll band. In an interview with John Lennon, he said this about Twist and Shout. The last song nearly killed me. My voice wasn't the same for a long time after. Anytime I swallowed, it was like sandpaper. Please Please Me then hit #1 in the UK and stayed there for a record-breaking 30 weeks, only to be dethroned by their second album with the Beatles. They became sensations in England and then decided to go overseas. The Beatles appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show on February 9th, 1964 and played 5 songs for a record-shattering 73 million viewers. I Wanna Hold Your Hand then reached #1 in America and was making waves in the pop culture. Beatlemania was in full swing and the world was captivated by the 4 young Liverpudlian lads with the mop tops. The Beatles had made it big in the USA, so now, as they say, the rest is history. Even though the Beatles came from humble beginnings, they still achieved a fame that transcends time. From the chance meeting of John and Paul, their gigs at the Cavern Club, and their record-breaking TV appearance, they have changed the music scene and the world. The Beatles are a perfect example of how most often creative success can come from the most unlikely of places. Any questions?
Yes. How did the Beatles break up?
There was a lot of rising tensions due to John bringing in Yoko Ono, and George was mad because he wasn't getting any songs on the albums, and they were just getting really mad at each other. So they broke up. Yeah.
How long was it before they broke up?
They stayed together for about 10 years. Broke up in 1970.
Did they ever make up?
Ringo stayed in touch with all of them, but John, Paul, and George never really did. Yeah.
Who wrote the most songs from the Beatles?
John and Paul, I think they're about equal. Yeah.
Who's your favorite Beatle?
Paul.
Why?
Because I think he has the best singing voice, and he has a nice personality.
Do you think Ringo Starr gets enough credit?
No. He deserves more. Yeah. Good? Alright. Cool.